Hey everybody, CLARKSIDE here. Welcome to the start of something beautiful. Hopefully this will be the first of many The Division videos. I've put about 10 hours into the beta, and I just wanted to share some of my first impressions with you. A pretty inescapable starting point is the graphics. Good actual lord, this game is beautiful with a capital B. Ubisoft Massive have done a sterling job faithfully recreating the look and feel of Manhattan, New York. Or at least what New York would look like when society collapses following a pandemic outbreak. Although the playable area is not an exact one-to-one representation of the real city, it feels like New York. The main streets, avenues and landmarks are there, but most of the urban sprawl in between is somewhat scaled down. The sandbox environment is large enough for a game with no vehicles, but not so large that you get tired of running from one mission to the next. The ambiance and environmental conditions are really what sucks you in. From beams of early morning light fanning through the city skyline to street lights trying to break through dense fog. Just as much attention has been put into the lighting and atmospheric conditions as any other parts of the game. When I started to hear stories about graphics being downgraded, I was worried that this game would be a repeat of Watch Dogs-like proportions. However, the graphical sacrifices that Massive have made are minimal and hardly take away from the breathtaking effect that this game has on me. I underestimated how much street furniture, debris and rubbish would be in the final game. I assumed that the trailers we saw at E3 and Gamescom were representative of a high-end PC, and that the streets would not be as densely detailed as what's made it into the Xbox One version. I've only played it on the Xbox One so far, which is the horsepower underdog. It will look even better on PC or PS4. The real wizardry that baffles me is how everything loads on the fly. There are no loading screens. Even when you go from the PvE sandbox into the PvP dark zone, there's no noticeable or interruptive matchmaking. You pass through one door into a room with a vendor, and out the other side and load into the PvP space straight away. Whatever matchmaking is happening occurs in the background, and from my experience, has been without failure every time. An immersive setting would be nothing without great mechanics to support it. Fortunately, this is another area where The Division succeeds. Ever since The Division was announced, gamers, YouTubers and streamers started making comparisons to Destiny, and some even calling it a Destiny killer. I wouldn't go as far as to parrot those same sentiments. Sure, they have some similarities, but they're not as closely related as you might think. Whereas I see Destiny as being a very polished first-person shooter first, and an RPG light game second, The Division flips that formula. It's a very polished RPG first, and a third-person cover-based shooter second. The cover mechanics take a bit of getting used to, but once you get accustomed to the controls, then they work like a dream. When you're in cover, you can simply aim at the next piece of cover and hold down A or X button. You'll automatically take the quickest route with your character's head ducked down to minimise the chance of getting hit by enemy fire. It makes a change from other cover-based shooters where you'll either have to hold down a crouch button most of the time, or you'll accidentally hit an action button at the wrong time and you'll snap to a random bit of scenery. It's a refreshing feeling to not have to fight against fiddly controls. From cover you can blind fire over or around the sides of obstacles, or you can aim down sights for extra accuracy. Releasing from ADS will snap you back into cover. Outside of cover, some of the emotes and gear selection from the D-pad can be a bit time consuming and awkward, but this is just a minor gripe. The gunplay wasn't quite what I was expecting. A lot of the time it feels a little bit clumsy, but I don't know how much of that is down to being a low-level character with low-level gear. I expect that higher tier weapons will inherently be more accurate, and different mods will give a more precise aiming reticle. At any time you can have a primary, a secondary and a sidearm weapon equipped. The weapon classes are your usual archetypes: pistols, shotguns, submachine guns, assault rifles, marksman rifles and light machine guns. Ubisoft Massive have done a great job of making each class feel different to the next and giving them their own specific role in combat. The large health pools on the enemies can be a bit jarring for a game that's meant to have a real world setting. In a game like Destiny, it makes sense that an alien in power armor can take 20 plus headshots before dying, because it's a sci-fi shooter, whereas The Division has gangsters in hoodies or the occasional cleaner in a hazmat suit. Being a bullet sponge doesn't quite fit the setting, but this is an RPG and the whole thing would collapse in on itself if there wasn't that variety in health pools from the low level mobs to majors and ultras. Once you accept it and just go with it, then it is a very fun experience. The first main task in the story is to find your base of operations. From here you're given new missions or side tasks, and completing said activities reward you with new loot and resources. There's several missions early on which unlock new NPCs who have their own wing in the base of operations. Each wing is linked to a different skill tree on your character. As you reclaim resources scattered throughout the city, you'll upgrade your base of operations, and doing so will grant you new skills. Your skill trees are medical for healing based abilities, security for support or tank based abilities, and tech for DPS based abilities. In the beta, you can unlock a couple of abilities in the health tree, but only one each in security and tech. You can switch between different builds on the fly, you're not permanently locked into a particular class. I prefer this fluid-based character customization compared to other games which force you down the route of having multiple characters or alts to experience every class build the game has to offer. There's different missions specific to each wing of the base of operations, and there's a certain amount of flexibility with what order you do them in. You can replay any completed story missions at a higher level for a more difficult experience and for better rewards and loot. The great thing is that these story missions are farmable. You can keep replaying them over and over to get a complete set of higher level loot. In addition to upgrading your base and unlocking new abilities, the gun customization is a whole other facet of refining your character. Most weapons have up to 5 areas of customization or mods: sights, magazine, muzzle, grip and paint job. Aside from the paint job, each mod will improve your gun's stats, whether that's range, critical hit chance or handling to name a few. Some mods will give you bonus XP for kills whilst they're equipped. I prefer this approach to honing your weapon of choice compared to the RNG system in Destiny, where you have to count on luck to get your ideal roll with your dream combo of perks. In addition to mods, some higher level weapons have their own abilities or perks built in, which unlock as you use them. The best loot in the game resides in the Dark Zone, a truly lawless and nail-biting experience. You'll come across different encounters and strongholds full of higher level mobs, but it's how you interact with other players in the Dark Zone that keeps you on the edge of your seat. It's not a strict PvP deathmatch kind of mode. You can either choose to work with other players and fire teams or fight them. All bets are off. In the lore of The Division, the Dark Zone is ground zero for where the pandemic hit the hardest. The agents that were in the area left in a hurry and left high-end equipment behind. Any loot that you pick up in the Dark Zone is contaminated and can't be used until it's been extracted and cleansed. When you pick up Dark Zone loot, you'll have a yellow hazmat bag on your back, which other players can see. This puts you at risk of being jumped at any time and them stealing your loot. Any player that kills another in the Dark Zone will be marked as a rogue agent for a short amount of time. If a rogue agent kills enough agents, then they'll get a bounty on their head. If they keep going, the bounty level will keep increasing, granting them higher Dark Zone rep. The risk reward is that if the rogue agent dies to another player whilst they've got a bounty on their head, then the other player will receive a substantial reward, and the rogue agent loses a chunk of Dark Zone rep and Dark Zone currency, along with any Dark Zone loot they're carrying. There's no guaranteed way of safely leaving the Dark Zone with your Dark Zone loot. You have to extract it by calling in a helicopter. This is probably the most intense part of the whole Dark Zone experience, because you have to wait for the helicopter to arrive. Once it does, you'll have to attach your loot to a cable to be hoisted on board and extracted. This is when you're the most exposed and unable to fight back. Some players will watch your back and let you safely extract your loot. Others are more treacherous and will kill you on sight. This lawless playground of intertwined PvP and PvE elements is reminiscent of survival sandbox games like DayZ, H1Z1 and Rust, where you can be comrades with other players one moment, only to be betrayed by them once they've used you for all you're worth. The best way to improve your chances is by going in with a squad of up to 3 other players who you personally know and trust, although nothing is certain in the Dark Zone. Every player is at liberty to make and break their allegiances. One of the more surprising elements of The Division is the attention to story. Previously, bits of lore had trickled out explaining the pandemic, the fall of New York, and the agent's role in rebuilding things. But until recently, there was nothing to indicate that there would be a core story mode that was backed up with cinematic cutscenes. In addition to that, there's hidden collectibles like intel and lost phones, which add extra lore through audio and text. The ecosystem, which stands for Evidence Correlation Holographic Overlay, pieces together smartphone data and CCTV footage to recreate scenes from the past in a static 3D hologram. There's something haunting about the panicked and desperate voices juxtaposed with the pixelated ghost-like statues. I wish something like this had been done with the Lost Ghosts and Grimoire cards scattered within Destiny. I would love to see scenes from famous battles or showdowns between legendary characters play out as a hologram in the lush worlds of Destiny. However, that is a topic for another video, one that focuses on Destiny a little more and the things that it could borrow from other games, The Division included. There's all sorts of other topics I could go into, but I've already rambled enough. I believe I've covered the main things that I've been wowed by and raised a couple of concerns. I will be doing some more in-depth The Division videos at a later date. And that, my fellow agents, is a wrap. I want to thank you all for watching. Drop me a comment and a like if you've found this video useful, and hello newcomers, and don't forget to subscribe. Until the next time, this is Clarkside signing out.
And you'll be fixing this. Saving lives. Now if you'll excuse me, I'll get started.